Hello everyone, and this is Jake from CINECALIBER. Today's video is going to be a little different than most of my other videos. It's going to be more of a list of projects to basically prepare for an upcoming movie. With all that said, D23 just happened past weekend, and Marvel gave us a lot to talk about when it comes to Avengers Doomsday. We got more looks at the movie, more information about the Marvel story going forward, and perhaps most importantly, Marvel doubled down on the idea that the past is coming back to play a major role in this film. I mean, we're talking about Avengers, Doctor Doom, Fantastic Four, and especially the return up from the original Fox X-Men movies. And that got me thinking, what do we actually need to watch before going into Avengers Doomsday? Because at this point, I don't think watching every single MCU and Disney Plus show is necessary, but I also don't think the super short list I had originally is enough anymore. So when I went back through the entire MCU, the Legacy Spider-Man movies, the Fox X-Men universe, and the Multiverse Saga, I put together what I think is the most ultimate streamlined Doomsday rewatch list, and potentially a list for Secret Wars as well. The goal really isn't to watch everything. The goal is to watch everything that could actually matter. And I want to stress one thing before I get started. This is not an officially mandated Marvel Watch order. This is my personal recommendation based on everything Marvel has established so far. And obviously, some of this is speculation because we don't know everything about Doomsday right now. So let's get into it. What I first recommend is Phase 1, the Avengers Ensemble Saga, basically, is Iron Man. We're starting with Iron Man simply because this is where the MCU begins. Tony Stark's importance to the MCU has only grown over the years. With Robert Downey Jr. now returning to the MCU as Doom, I think it's worth revisiting where the entire saga started. We're going all the way from Tony Stark creating Iron Man to Robert Downey Jr. playing the villain of Doomsday. That's a pretty incredible full circle story, if you ask me. Number 2 is the Incredible Hulk. I'm keeping this kind of optional. It's technically part of the MCU's foundation, but it doesn't have much direct connection to the current Doomsday story. If you're doing a complete rewatch of Phase 1, I would just watch it. If you're trying to save time, you can skip it, but it's a pretty decent film on Hulk. Number 3 is Iron Man 2. This gives us more Tony Stark, introduces Black Widow, continues establishing S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury. It's also part of the foundation that eventually leads to the Avengers. Number 4 is Thor. We need Thor because he becomes one of the central surviving Avengers. More importantly, establishes Loki, and Loki becomes extremely important once we get into the Multiverse Saga. Number 5 is Captain America, the first Avenger. Steve Rogers is another major piece of the Avengers mythology. And considering Doomsday is bringing back legacy characters from different eras of Marvel, understanding Steve's original story becomes increasingly useful here. Number 6 is the Avengers. This is where the original Avengers finally come together. It establishes the team dynamic that the MCU spent the next decade building upon. And Loki's involvement also becomes important when we eventually get to the TVA and the multiverse. That's it for Phase 1. We'll get to Phase 2, which is when the Avengers expand. At number 7, we have Iron Man 3. This continues Tony's story after the Battle of New York. It's not specifically necessary for the multiverse, but since we're all watching Phases 1 through 3 here, I think it belongs. Number 8 is Thor: The Dark World. This is probably one of the weaker entries in the MCU, but we're keeping it because it establishes the Aether, which becomes the Reality Stone and continues Loki and Thor's story. Again, we're completing the Infinity Saga rather than cherry-picking it. On number 9, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This is one of the most important movies in the entire MCU. It fundamentally changes S.H.I.E.L.D., introduces the modern political landscape of the MCU, and develops Steve, Bucky, and Natasha. And Bucky is now one of the characters returning for Doomsday. Number 10, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. This expands the MCU beyond Earth and introduces the cosmic side of the universe. It also establishes the Infinity Stones in greater detail. Number 11, we have Avengers: Age of Ultron. This is important because it introduces Vision, Scarlet Witch, and establishes the Sokovia fallout. It also continues building the Avengers into the team we eventually see in the fractured movie of the Civil War. Number 12, we have Ant-Man. Ant-Man becomes more important later than you might expect. The quantum realm eventually becomes an important part of the MCU's larger multiverse mythology. And we get on to phase 3, guys, the Infinity Saga. Number 13, Captain America, Civil War. This is essential. The Avengers split apart. Bucky becomes central to Steve's story. Spider-Man enters the MCU, and we establish the fractured state of the Avengers. That's incredibly important going forward into everything as it follows. Number 14, we have Doctor Strange. We need Doctor Strange because he's one of MCU's most important characters when it comes to the multiverse. This establishes Stephen Strange, the mystic arts, and the rules surrounding reality manipulation. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This continues the Guardians and expands the cosmic side of the MCU. It's definitely not a Doomsday requirement, but because we're completing Phase 3, I'm kind of keeping it here. You have Spider-Man Homecoming. This establishes Tom Holland's Spider-Man and his relationship with Tony Stark. That relationship ultimately becomes extremely important to Peter's story in No Way Home. We have Thor Ragnarok at number 17. This is essential for Thor's character going into Infinity War and Endgame. It also establishes the destruction of Asgard and puts Thor, Loki, and Hulk together before the Infinity Saga's climax. Number 18, we have Black Panther. This establishes Wakanda, T'Challa, and the importance of Wakanda to the Avengers. And with Wakanda playing a role in the modern MCU, it was worth having a fresh take on it. Then we have number 19, the Avengers Infinity War. Obviously essential. We have Thanos, the Infinity Stones, the snap, and the beginning of the MCU's biggest catastrophe. Number 20, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. This is important primarily because of the quantum realm. And it ends with Scott Lang trapped in the quantum realm during the snap, which becomes extremely important in Endgame. Number 21, we have Captain Marvel. This establishes Carol Danvers in Nick Fury's history. She's also one of the surviving heroes going into the post-Endgame MCU. Number 22, we have Avengers Endgame. Obviously, this is the conclusion of the Infinity Saga and the point where the MCU's original era ends. And because Doomsday is bringing back characters and actors from different eras of Marvel, having the ending of the original Avengers story fresh is important. Number 23, we have Spider-Man Far From Home. This is our first real look at Peter Parker trying to live in a world after Endgame. And it leads directly into the multiverse story that eventually becomes No Way Home. Now it gets a little interesting, guys. Now we're going to get into the Legacy Spider-Man multiverse contingency era, I would say. We're leaving the MCU for a little bit. I want to be very clear. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield have not been officially confirmed for Doomsday. I'm including these movies because No Way Home established that these versions of Spider-Man exist within the MCU's multiverse. And with incursions becoming such an important concept, I want to be prepared in case these universes become relevant. So 24, we have Spider-Man. This establishes Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker. If we're going to revisit his Spider-Man in No Way Home, we should know where he comes from. Then we have Spider-Man 2. This is arguably the most important Tobey Spider-Man movie. It gives us a definitive version of his Peter Parker and his relationship with being Spider-Man. Number 26, we have Spider-Man 3. I'm including it because we're now doing the complete Tobey universe rather than only the best movies. And No Way Home brings back characters from this universe. Number 27, we have The Amazing Spider-Man. Now we're moving to Andrew Garfield's universe. Again, this isn't because Andrew's confirmed for Doomsday. It's because we're preparing for the possibility of his universe becoming relevant. Number 28, we have The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This completes Andrew's Spider-Man story and gives us the version of Peter Parker we eventually see in No Way Home. And then at number 29 is Spider-Man No Way Home. This is essential. This is the movie that officially connects Tom Holland's MCU Spider-Man to the previous Spider-Man universes. And that's exactly why I'm including the previous movies. If Doomsday or Secret Wars starts pulling more alternate universes into the story, you already know where these versions of Spider-Man came from. Then we're going to go on to the X-Men. This is the big new addition. This is where the list kind of changed for me. Marvel's now made the Fox X-Men universe much harder to ignore. We've already known that actors like Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, James Marsden, Rebecca Romijn, Alan Cumming, and Kelsey Grammer are returning as their characters in Doomsday. Indeed, 23 just reinforced how important the X-Men are to Marvel's future by officially unveiling the new MCU X-Men cast. So now I think the Fox movies are absolutely worth revisiting. So at number 30, we have X-Men. This is where the cinematic X-Men begins. We meet Professor X, Magneto, Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, Jean Grey, and the original X-Men team. If these characters are all going to collide with the Avengers, we should understand their origins. Then we have the number 31, X-Men 2, X-Men United. This develops the original X-Men characters even further and establishes the relationships between them. Number 32, we have X-Men The Last Stand. I'm including this because we're watching the Fox X-Men story as a universe rather than simply picking the highest rated movies. It also gives us important context for characters whose stories eventually become complicated by the timeline changes. Number 33, we have X-Men First Class. This introduces the younger versions of Xavier, Magneto, Beast, and Mystique. And because the Fox X-Men timeline gets complicated, First Class is important for understanding the alternate history. And number 34, we have X-Men Days of Future Past. This is one of the most important movies on the list. Why? This is essentially the movie that breaks and reshapes the Fox X-Men timeline. Time travel creates a new timeline, giving us the perfect foundation for understanding how Marvel can pull different versions of these characters into a multiverse story. Number 35, we have Logan. It's really the final one in the X-Men saga here. This is important because Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is now part of the larger Marvel conversation. It's also one of the best conclusions to a legacy superhero character we've ever gotten. Then we're going to go on to like the essential multiverse projects. Number 36, we have Loki, season 1. If you only want to watch one Disney Plus show for Doomsday, watch Loki. Season 1 introduces the TVA and completely changes our understanding of timelines. It establishes that branching timelines can exist and introduces the larger machinery behind the MCU's multiverse. Number 37 is Loki season 2. This takes the concept even further. By the end of Loki, we have a completely different understanding of timelines and the multiverse. And because Doomsday is dealing with realities potentially colliding with each other, this is extremely valuable context. Number 38, we have WandaVision. This one is slightly different. I don't think WandaVision is absolutely required to understand the entire Doomsday plot, but I do recommend it. It completely changes Wanda's character and leads directly into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Number 39, we have Doctor Strange in Multiverse of Madness. This is another essential multiverse movie. This is where we get a much better understanding of alternate universes, dreamwalking, incursions, and what can happen when realities start interfering with each other. And with incursions potentially being one of the biggest concepts leading to Secret Wars, this movie is absolutely worth revisiting. Number 40, we have Deadpool and Wolverine. This might be the most obvious reason to watch the legacy movies. Deadpool and Wolverine directly brings the Fox Marvel universe into the MCU's multiverse. It shows that these old franchises are simply being forgotten. Aren't simply being forgotten. They're part of the larger multiverse, and considering Doomsday is now bringing back multiple Fox X-Men characters, this movie becomes even more relevant. Then we get to the current MCU setup. 41, Captain America, Brave New World. This establishes Sam Wilson as the new Captain America and continues the modern political side of the MCU. It's not a multiverse movie, but it's part of the current MCU landscape heading into Doomsday. At number 42, we have Thunderbolts. This establishes the new group of anti-heroes that Marvel is positioning as another important team in the current MCU. It also gives us characters like Yelena, Bucky, US Agent, Red Guardian, and Sentry. Several of these characters are now part of the larger Doomsday picture. Number 43, we have the Fantastic Four First Steps. This is absolutely essential. The Fantastic Four are now directly tied to the larger Doomsday story. So before going into Doomsday, you definitely want to know who this version of the Fantastic Four are and what universe they come from. Number 44, we have Spider-Man Brand New Day. This is the final piece before Doomsday, and because it's the current Spider-Man story, it's worth watching immediately for the Avengers movie. And that pretty much is it, guys. There's a few I left out, but there is two of them that I would say could be also recommended, but I didn't really think they were too necessary. One of them being Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. That one you can kind of watch after Endgame if you wanted to. That one's just going to introduce Shang-Chi, but his story was mostly centered towards Kang. So and Kang has pretty much been rewritten at this point. So it's up to you if you want to watch him just to see his origin. And then you also have Wakanda Forever on Black Panther 2. So that one's really just going to show the legacy of the Black Panther, and it might just show you some conflicts that happen in there that they might kind of touch upon in Doomsday and Secret Wars. But again, I didn't see them to be absolutely necessary. But that is my list. If you guys have your own list, please let me know. And also, yeah, just let me know if you think there should be something else in this list as well. I'd be curious to see everyone's thoughts. But without further ado, that was all for today. Let's see what happens with the MCU for the end of the year. Okay? This is Jake from CINECALIBER.